All right. Just waiting for the Instagram thing to do its thing. Come on. There it goes.
There it goes. Nice.
And here we are for another episode of Dualistic Unity Social Boxing Day Edition. Not that that matters because we're not selling anything, but it's Boxing Day. We hope you had a fantastic Christmas. If you didn't get a chance, go and check out our Christmas special. We were covering It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart. Fantastic movie. Really, really good. A good story in terms of selflessness and the suffering that goes along with really wanting to be more than you are when the entire time you are already fundamental to so many things. It's just a fantastic movie. Definitely go and check it out. It's funny. I've been having this conversation, this ongoing back and forth in the comment section of your recent video regarding chemical imbalances within the brain, and the fact that that claim has been completely disproven. Like, it's been shown to be lacking in evidence. There's no basis for it whatsoever. And so all this time we've been told you have a chemical imbalance in your brain, and that has been used to help us or to assist us or encourage us to take pharmaceuticals, particularly SSRIs. And so you made this video saying not that SSRIs don't have an influence on the brain, because obviously they do, but that the excuse of chemical imbalance isn't founded. It's not based on anything. And that has set people off in so many different ways. Not everybody. A lot of people are like, wow, thanks. That's great. I'm so glad that you spoke up for this, because that's what I experienced. That's a lot of what I went through. That's what I'm going through right now. All of that. But a lot of people, if you read the comments, they were just in straight up like, nope, you need to do research. You don't know enough. You're the fucking devil. Like, it was pretty bad. Like, there was a lot of insults. It wasn't just disagreement. It was just straight up, you're putting people in danger. That's not the case. And you actually provided an article, not only an article, but you pointed out something that they can go and look at. They can check out chemical imbalance, debunked or disproven. They can go and look for the information if they would like to. It's due diligence and all of that. But often it wasn't the case. And a lot of the time it was just going back and forth about how irresponsible we are, about how it's not based on any science, about how it's not based on any actual studies. And again, all of which you can go and look for yourself. I'm not going to try and prove anything here. But what I thought was so funny was that it was the same kind of response that I've heard from addicts. And what's so interesting about that is that if you go and you look up whether SSRIs are addictive, they'll say, no, absolutely not. SSRIs are not addictive, but they can create a physical dependence over time, which can have a consequence and can create withdrawal symptoms, making it very difficult to get off of SSRIs, but they're not addictive. So then I went and looked up, is cannabis addictive? And it said cannabis is absolutely addictive because it can create a physical dependency that may cause you to suffer withdrawal symptoms and other consequences if you were to stop using it. And that sounded really familiar to me, almost identical, in fact. And so it almost begs the question whether or not that bias is meant to be that obvious. But I just thought it was really funny, because it's not on the substance, is it? It's on the person. An SSRI can be as addictive as any other substance that allows you to limit the scope of what you're feeling, if that is your intention. And that's more or less the point, is that a lot of this was just, no, because this is my crutch and silver bullet, and I can't question it, because if I did question it, it would throw everything else into disarray. It would absolutely require me to reassess my role in my mental health, and I don't want to. I want to look at these things as being necessary. Now, I want to address this right now. Well, you're saying that they're not necessary in every situation. Never said that. Nobody here ever said that whatsoever. What we're saying is that the excuse of a chemical imbalance is often the first thing that we'll assume when we don't like or don't understand what we are experiencing or feeling. This is terrible. I don't think I can take it. God, this is making my life so hard. More importantly, it's making it hard for me to go to work and fit into society. And so there's got to be something wrong with me. And then we reach for imbalance. Maybe there's nothing wrong with you. Maybe this is actually something much bigger. Maybe this points at a problem that is larger than just topping up the fluids in your brain. And that's very uncomfortable. In the same way that pointing out any systemic problem is uncomfortable. And so I thought it was really interesting that this thing is addictive, this thing is not addictive, but for the same goddamn reasons, very much based on the common belief of society in the pharmaceutical industries. It's a totally fucking biased perspective, and I thought it was damn funny.
No, very much so. Because you bring into question, our assumptions about society, which comprises of our assumptions about other people. The assumption that I am imbalanced. There has to be something relative in quote unquote balance that you are imbalanced relative to, be it someone else, be it the world. And so if there is a feeling like you're all over the place and you shouldn't be all over the place because you look around and everyone else isn't all over the place, or seemingly to you isn't all over the place, or society has a very structured way of existing, and this is, society's the right way to be. And all you're saying here is like, maybe it's all that shit that's out of balance that we're assuming is in balance. Like the Krishnamurti quote, it is sick to be properly. I never remember this quote. And I was like, maybe it'll just come to my mind randomly right now.
It's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society.
There we go. Thank you. And so it brings that into question. Like, is the world that we're existing within, going through the school system, like that fucks you up so bad. Of course, you're going to be out of whack coming out of that to some degree. It's just, how much do you perceive yourself to be more out of whack than everything else or everyone else? And like this thought, and because we're all trying to hide this thing, like I like throughout the day, I'll go through being petrified of like everything and worried and blah, 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 to kind of laughing and being relaxed within, an hour, and like everything in between in that point. And just because I talk to so many people and, we have interactions all the time and people are more open in, our Patreon calls or whatever, it doesn't seem so wild. But if I was going to, my old corporate job every day, and it seemed like everyone was like happy all the time, putting on a good face, basically, I probably think I was really fucked up, like the way that I've felt more recently, just with the ups and the downs and the feelings that I go through. There would absolutely be that assumption if I was living in a world where everyone was suppressing more of that stuff, as opposed to being willing to like, oh yeah, I was going through all this crazy. Oh yeah, I'm really afraid of this. Oh yeah, I'm worried about this. Oh yeah, I get concerned. I'm very insecure about this. But instead, we just like, buy shit or make us look a certain way or change the way we look. And we just perceive that as normal, as opposed to being a response to insecurity, to fear, to concern, to worry, to self-hatred, to self-doubt. Like so many of the things that we perceive as being like, oh, these are awesome things. You achieved so much. Like a lot of that is coming from this feeling like, I'm not enough. I'm not enough. I got to be more. I got to do something to prove to myself that I'm more, because deep down, I don't feel like I'm enough. And because we aren't like willing to, and it's not even like people being willing to be open about it is necessarily going to change the landscape immediately, but there is a big part of that where like people don't see vulnerability. People see vulnerability as a weakness. People see honesty in how they're feeling, what they're going through, as a weakness. And it's not to say that everyone has to be running around being like, oh, I'm scared of this, I'm afraid of this, like, just word vomiting all of their stuff, because that can, in the same way as anything else, become addictive and kind of rely upon, and then people responding like, oh no, you're not, and then it becomes phishing, sort of, it's like, oh, I'm so bad at this, oh, I look terrible at this, and it's like, you're kind of just looking for people to be like, no, you're not so bad. But anyway, back to whatever point I started with about imbalance versus balance. And that assumption that you're out of balance relative to everything else is just an assumption. And there is kind of that feeling of specialness in a contorted way, like no one understands my suffering, like I'm the only one that goes through these feelings, these things, because no one's out there talking about it. Everyone's masking, everyone's like doing things to hide the shit that they deal with and go through. So most people who are suffering do assume that kind of they're like the only one that goes through the thing that they go through to the extent to which they go through. And as soon as you start realizing, oh, a lot of people actually go through these things. Oh, a lot of people are actually insecure about this. Oh, a lot of people are actually afraid of this. It's not going to be so easily ran to that like there's something wrong with me, when it's seen as more of a, I don't know, normal thing to be all over the place in your life, or feel like you don't know what's going on, or you have certain perceptions of yourself that you otherwise were just hiding before you were more willing to, I don't know, express them.
But isn't that funny, right? We're looking at the world, we're seeing these things. Like we look at them and we refer to them as like a pandemic or an epidemic. And I'm specifically talking about like the mental health pandemic or the opioid crisis, right? Like, or homelessness. Any of these things, like we're looking at these things and we're going, oh, these things have to be addressed, rather than these things are clear fucking indications that there is something wrong. We're looking at this like there's something, these people need help. It's like, yeah, for a reason. And like there seems to be an awful lot of them. So perhaps there's an underlying factor. Like maybe, just maybe, there is something underneath all of this that is contributing to this hell for so many people. And we don't want to look at that more often than not, because it would require us to look at everything. But not everything in terms of the world around us, because there's lots of evidence there that shit's fucked up. But everything in terms of how we see ourselves. Not how we see ourselves individually, but as a species. Not even as a species, but as existence. How we see ourselves in terms of our role in reality as a whole, because we have this archaic meat suit or meat puppet mentality. Meat puppet is more appropriate because we keep thinking that there is some invisible deity or some invisible source, whether it be the universe or source consciousness or God or whatever it might be, pulling the strings, making sure everything happens according to a plan. We have this incredible perception of ourselves as being nothing more than the body that we are experiencing. And yet we have so much scientific proof that that is not the case. We have so many very good questions about consciousness, about awareness as a whole, about the experience of existence, the experience of experience, that we could be having an entirely different conversation about what this is all about, and thus different priorities. But as long as we are nothing more than a human being on a rock spinning through the universe that's totally disconnected from everything, we are never going to get out of this survival, gotta get mine jack kind of mentality. All of this makes total sense if you look at it from a certain point of view. But that point of view is fucking chaos. It's the point of view that's panicking and running around the deck of a ship, shoving people over the side as the ship is sinking, rather than coming together and making a plan. All right, hold on, everybody, people. Like the ship is sinking. Rather than lose our heads, what can we do? But we're too busy freaking the fuck out. Give me that life jacket, like it's going to help. And it's just that lack of clarity. And that lack of clarity comes from a perception that reinforces a fear that doesn't need to be there. And that is a fear that you are alone and separate and doomed, that you are, in fact, not pivotal to your own existence, that there are forces outside of your awareness that are more powerful than you are, despite your awareness being all you've ever experienced. And I mean that with everybody else too. And that's a big thing. There's a lot there. There's a lot of intensity there. I get all that. But it really is just the fact that we're sticking to a mentality that, although it feels safe and predictable, contributes to our hell on so many different levels. And in order to get past it, we have to start questioning things that we don't want to question, like God.
And that whole situation, that you're talking about, ship sinking, grabbing life vests, people going berserk. On top of that, we're maintaining that, like, this is the best we can do, like, this is the best we've ever done. Like, no, nothing's actually fucked up. No, this is great. This is exactly how everything's supposed to be. Yeah, I'm afraid of fucking everything, and I, confine myself to a very small, comfortable box. But, no, it's great because I'm not actually afraid of anything. I just avoid all the things that I am afraid of. And I create this safe little environment for me where I feel good about myself and I've accomplished certain things. So when I am feeling down and feeling beaten, I just look back there at all the things that I've done. I'm like, oh no, I am great. And it totally allows you to avoid just like the shit that you're going through right now. So we maintain this perspective too, that like things are great. It's like, even when I'm willing to admit, like, oh, I'm worried about something, nervous about something, afraid of something. I'm like, it's not to say that there's something wrong with that, but like the assumption that being that nervous or worried or afraid of something is like just a part of the human experience. Like, it's a normal way to live, to be super afraid and worried and nervous about things that you're not really sure and like don't actually have a basis in physical fear. Like, they're not physical fears. Like, they're conceptual things having to do with my perception of myself and the thoughts about myself and the things that I perceive myself to be. And yet when I really sit in it, I'm like, okay, but how that would potentially play out isn't even like, wouldn't even end up in a way that I'm afraid of. It's just kind of like habitual concern or worry or fear. And I even had the thought the other day. I was thinking about like sports or like a starting quarterback on a team, like not playing super well. And like they're kind of playing with the underlying fear of getting demoted or getting fired or getting let go or having the person behind them take their role. And then I started laughing because I was like, there's a part of me that's kind of like afraid of getting fired from being myself, but like there's no way to do that. And there's this fear that like something's gonna happen. And even with fucking, dualistic unity, like dualistic unity is us. It's like, as much as it's everyone, everything, it's like it's just what what we are, what we bring to the table. And so it's like the thought of like, oh, I'm like the concern even going into a fucking episode. Like, there's an assumption that there's a right way. And like, not that I actively think this, but it kind of, when I was sitting with it, I was like, am I kind of afraid of like getting fired from being myself? Because if that is the case, if the only thing I have to ever really do and everything stems from the relaxation that comes with being willing to be myself, like there's no way to get fired from that. Like, you're kind of stuck in that spot. Even if you feel like things change or shift, it's like you're still you here as you are. And so it's just funny kind of sitting on that. Like, what am I really, worried about or concerned about? Because I'll get like pangs of concern or worry as someone's just like, I'm talking to someone being afraid I won't have something to say in response. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, that shit comes like so close to situations, but it's just like because I'm thinking about myself. Like, because it's like there's things happening and I'm just like posted up, standing in the middle, like, no, I gotta think about me. I'm important. I'm like, oh yeah, it's so interesting. But anyway.
Yeah, and I know normally we would pound on the fact that so much of that comes back to just being conditioned by school, just test after test after test, not just in terms of your scholastic achievements, but one social situation after another where you must fit in because there is so much on the line in terms of your existence in this institution if you don't fit in, right? You don't want to be an outcast. You don't want to feel alone. You don't want to feel like everybody's judging you. So there's so much on the line in every situation because you fucking have to go there. So rather than do that, I just wanted to point out that another thing that we kind of do that's in line with that, we don't recognize it, whether you know, I guess again in the name of good intention, New Year's resolutions. I just wanted to mention, fuck New Year's resolutions. And I mean this because immediately you're setting yourself up for pressure. You're setting yourself up for self-judgment because now it's a New Year's resolution. It's very important. It's life-changing stuff. If you don't do this now, if you don't make this important today, you know, what's going to happen in your future? When isn't that the case? Like, why does it have to be on New Year's specifically? And more importantly, why is this one change so important to yourself? Are you trying to do something for your own health, or are you trying to do something because you should do it? Is this an actual choice you want to make, or is this something that you feel you should do, but you don't actually have the underlying priority to do it? Which is why we try and lean on New Year's resolution. It's like, no, this promise is going to get me through what is otherwise totally unimportant to me the rest of the fucking year. And it's really important to remember that. If it's important to you, do it. Not New Year's right now. And what's funny is that it never really is. It's not a new year by any means. There is no actual definitive start point where we start going around the sun. It's like, aha, we're in a new year now. That doesn't exist. There's no flag that's like, this is it. Round 2024. Like, there's nothing like that. So there is no actual new year. This is just an arbitrary date that we use to control, how we go to work and the holidays we celebrate and all the other fun stuff that we've been using for fucking ever. But it's all arbitrary. It's not Tuesday. It's not December. It's not New Year's. None of that shit's actually real. This is all just, convenient tools. So fuck that shit. Focus on what's important to you. Focus on what's important to you now. Not on some fictitious day. Because that's just putting pressure on yourself. You're once again putting yourself up against an invisible bar. Like, I got to do this. What do you think's going to happen if you don't do that? What do you think's going to happen, as you're going into it with that pressure in the background? It's going to make it less likely to actually succeed because that pressure is going to make you deviate. It's going to put you back going towards the thing that you're probably trying to get away from, but you're probably doing to deal with the stress that you're causing for yourself. How many of our New Year's resolutions are trying to cut away consequences that are only there because those things are helping us deal with the stress that we're causing for ourselves the rest of the time? I want to lose weight. I want to quit smoking. I really want to, get my business in gear this year and get a lot more money out of it. Right. But how much of your money is going into needless purchases? How much of your money is going into, a gambling addiction? How much of your money is going into, trying to make yourself feel better about how you look or how people perceive you or where you live or what you drive, and all things that are unnecessary if your focus is really on your business. So it helps to keep in mind, just focus on your priorities. Stop setting bars for yourself. Stop setting a test that you have to live up to. You don't need to. You already know what you have to do, obviously. You don't need to do it on New Year's. You can start right now. Or try and understand why it's so hard for you to start. Maybe exercise some self-honesty, some self-reflection. There's no rush. If it's really important to you, it'll happen. If you just take the time.
Yeah, well said. And how much that roundabout of expectations of yourself in different ways kind of like reinforces things, and an unwillingness to be self-honest. It causes you to just kind of keep building on that. Like, I got to do this, accomplish this, achieve this, make this new habit because of something else that you're, you know, placing on top of that willingness to just be honest with how you're feeling, what you're dealing with, what you're going through right now. And so much of, and I'm realizing the intensity that, like, the intensity of just life that I was kind of avoiding or suppressing or using other things to mitigate, and even like, looking forward to something, or like like setting a goal and kind of keeping that in mind as something that then I am on a trajectory towards allows me to kind of distract myself from where I'm at to some degree, and like the focus on something in the future or somewhere that I'm getting. Like I feel like I go through less of that, like the less future focused thinking, but then it'll still be there for certain types of things, usually on the fearful side more so. And then just being left with where I'm at, like there's a lot of intensity there because I'm not like, it's interesting. Like I don't really think or look forward that often to future focused stuff, but there'll still be like this underlying concern, even in the moment, of something in the future playing out or being a product of something that I'm doing right now. And there'll be concern of like how what I'm doing right now plays out in the future. And there's still sort of, I don't know, I attach to that. And I guess as I'm talking, I'm like, fuck yeah, I think that is where a lot of my, concern comes from, is like how it's going to impact the future or have influence over it. And it's again, it's that fucking desire to have control over it. Like I can do something right now that controls the future or how things play out in the future. And it's again, like you posted a video about last week, just anxiety and control go hand in hand. The more you believe that control can be something that you can have or attain, there's going to be anxiety that comes with that inevitably. And so there's absolutely, as I sit in that spot and like wonder like, why do I feel shitty or feel like I'm suffering or feel like I'm worried? It's because I'm holding on to like there's a way that I can do something that allows for me to have control over how things play out, how things turn out. And it's like, of course, no wonder there's so much fucking weight, because it's like, what am I trying to control? I'm trying to control infinite perceptions via how I act. Like, and there's not even, when I sit on that, I'm like, all right, so this thing could be even for like a video, trying to have control over how something plays out. It's like that could be viewed by thousands of people, 10,000 people, a million people. And like, I have this assumption that if I just take the time for it to be curated in this specific way, or I say the best thing, it's going to be perceived in the way that I assume it's going to be perceived by hypothetically a million people. Like, you think a million people are going to perceive that video in the same exact way? You think a million people, 10 people, 15 people, 3 people are going to see this in the way that you think they're going to see you in the way that you think they're going to see you, and you're maintaining this rigidity and right way of acting and talking and speaking and doing things and fucking living, assuming that it's going to be perceived in the way that you think it's going to be perceived by fucking everyone that may take a split second to notice you. It's like, holy fuck, that's so funny from that point of view. Like, but that's how I am assuming things, clearly, if I am that concerned or worried. And it's like, motherfucker, just let go. You don't have control over even a singular perspective, even the way that you're fucking making assumptions about yourself. Like, just assuming that you can think about yourself in a proper enough way that it'll be like the right way to think about yourself at some point. It's like, man, I don't know.
Have you ever played Plinko? Do you know what the game Plinko is?
Sounds like a plink, like you drop something in water.
Okay, so
Just
that's kind of what it is.
initially.
But what it is you drop it from the top of this flat board, and on this flat board there are always these pegs at different places. And so this puck or whatever it is you drop has to hit a peg, and then it rolls either to the left or the right, and then it hits another peg and it rolls to the left or the right, or holds another peg to the left or the right. And so if you ever watch people playing this, it's the funniest fucking thing, because what they'll do is they'll like try to spin the thing before they drop it, and they'll like assuming that somehow this one thing is going to impact all of the preceding dichotomies, all the preceding polar choices that follow. Like, no, I got control, and you don't have control. There are too many, and you're looking at life, and it's the most giant fucking infinite plinko board ever. And you're just like, no, it's gonna go this way, and you're so upset when it doesn't. You're so invested that it does, and then you wonder why you're on the edge of your seat, tense all the fucking time, instead of just being the puck going through the plinko board. Whichever way you go, just stop resisting it. If you stopped having preferences, if you stop trying to think, no, it's got to go this way, it's got to go that way, it's absolutely going to go this, when you don't have control, how much less stress would you experience? But it is exactly that absurd.
That's fucking hilarious. I love that example, because I'm imagining them being at the top, and like, I'm pretty sure I've done this. Like, I'm pretty sure I've played that game and like done it in my life. Like, try and like think about what the potential pathways could be. And I'm just imagining like one drop and you making the assumption that it's going to end up in a spot based on an initial assumption. And then it goes the other way and you drop and you're like, fuck. And then it's like, and then you're all stressed out as it keeps going down. And then maybe it ends up in the spot that you were hoping at the end, but like you didn't know how I was going to get there anyway. And so, oh my God. And then, so you think of a fucking plinko board, and there's, I don't know, it's like a couple feet or whatever. There's like 100 pegs and it bounces around. It's like life is that times infinity. Like, it's like an endless plinko board. Now my mind's getting like, oh man, my imagination's going crazy. And I'm trying to picture an infinite plinko board and just being at the top. And it's like this expansive thing. You keep zooming out, zooming out. There's no edges to it whatsoever. And you're at this little point, like thinking about a random spot at another point, and like, all right. And that's kind of like, I don't know, in a sense, preparing for things just to make yourself more comfortable instead of just showing up and being like, oh, all right, here I am. And you drop it. And it's like, you can be really fucking tense as you drop it, thinking that you know where that shit's going to end up. Or you can just, toss it, like close your eyes and toss it and roll the dice. Cause that board, it could end up in such a different spot. And it's, oh my God, it's funny. And it's similar to we've talked before about just like the ocean and the currents of the ocean, and the assumption, like, it's like trying to control yourself swimming through the ocean, picking a very specific point and just being rigid as fuck as the currents come and the waves change and the ocean shifts. Same thing with that plinko board, assuming that. And manifestation series right there. That's such a massive assumption. It's like we could put so many things that people think about or talk about or worry about or fear about into the plinko example, like the manifestation of like coming up with a random hole at a random point in the board, and then just fucking tensing your way towards that, making the assumption that that's the best spot for it to be, just based on a future point. It's like you're trying to fucking manifest something, and it's like down the board 100 feet, picking a spot, assuming that hitting that spot in that point is going to get you to then the spot another 100 feet down, which is the best place for you to be, or the right way for things to go. And so you're being rigid as fuck as you go, like making the assumption that that's going to be. And even if you are able to focus on it so wholeheartedly and tense your way towards that specific point, it's then, what are you going to tense up until you get to the next point, and then tense till you get to the next point and the next point as you go? Or are you going to let go because it's still happening seamlessly, perfectly as you go, no matter which spot you bounce to? And maybe one spot's a little less comfortable than another, but they're all sort of varied in different ways, and you never know where they're going to bounce to or where they're going to lead to. But it's like we're over here making the assumption that where I drop the thing matters at all, and it obviously fucking doesn't, because you don't know where it's going to go or where it's going to end up, or even the assumptions down the board mean anything.
Well, that's just it. Unlike a game of Plinko, where there are specific values assigned at the bottom of this thing, all of the values are unknown. Like, no matter where you go in life, there's no specific, like, it's this valuable, because it comes down to you making the most of it all the time. Right? So there's not even an actual direction to aim for. We just want to believe that there is. And it causes so much. It's kind of like when you're playing Blinko, right? Like if you want to get to the slot that's the most points, right? And you drop your thing and it's going through and then it rolls away and you're like, "Oh no." And then it drops the next thing and it rolls away. You're like, "Fuck." And then it rolls away one more time. "Fuck." And each time you're getting a little farther and all of a sudden it starts rolling towards you, like, "Yeah, yeah, that's happening." And it's rolling towards it and it's just rolling away. And the whole time you're on the edge of your fucking seat. And it's all just because you think it needs to go to this one place with the most points. But in this case, in the Plinko game of life, that doesn't exist. Because it doesn't guarantee you happiness. The points don't matter, is what I'm saying. Because it really comes down to what you're doing with each and every moment of your life, which is each and every one of those moments that goes one way or another could have been an opportunity had you not been looking at it in terms of it being a failure or a success based on how much it was getting you towards the destination that you thought was best for you. But as long as you have that destination in mind, every choice is going to be either a failure or a success based on how you perceive it getting you closer or farther away from what you think you need. And so it really just comes down to playing Plinko just to watch the fucking puck. It's really it. Because why not? Right? Because at the end of the day, that's what we are. We are the puck, going from one choice to another, to another, to another, to another, to another, to another. And there are so many of them each and every day. And yet we start to think to ourselves, well, what's going to happen 10 years from now? What do I want to be when I'm 50? It's like, I don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow. I might have an epiphany 5 minutes from now that changes all of my life's priorities if I were to let myself.
And the rigidity that comes with that, and you think about how quickly they bounce down as you drop them. It's like it hits a peg, hits a peg, hits a peg, hits a peg, hits a peg. Every time, if you're judging which way is right or wrong, you're gonna think like that's gonna be constant, just like, okay, that was good. Okay, that was bad. Okay, that was good. Like that quickly. And that's as quickly as you can come up with judgments about yourself. And so you play that out and it's like, okay, then you have a point. It hits and it's the quote unquote correct way. Immediately, you're prepping to judge again. And so it's like we're playing this game where we're coming up with the right or the wrong thing, but then immediately there's another right or wrong thing and another right or wrong thing and another right or wrong thing and another right or wrong thing. And as long as you're living in this dichotomy, this assumption that you can know, you can have control, you can do the right or the wrong thing, it's just going to be this constant of like, this is right, this is wrong, this is right, this is wrong, this is right. All right, I feel better, I feel worse, I feel better, I feel worse. And that is the potential at all times. And it's like most of the things we do, the distractions are to quiet that down, like to suppress that. And so when you're not distracting yourself so much anymore, but you're still holding on to this idea that you can have control, you're like more aware of this thing that you've been doing your whole life. You've just been focusing on things that allow you to I don't know, avoid that constant hum or feel like it's not there, but it's still happening. It's still buzzing down there. You're just making assumptions. So all of the assumptions or distractions or things that you're doing are like the rigidity, like the things on top of that. So it's like you're not relaxed because if you were to relax, you'd start chipping down and maybe feel a little bit more of that hum, that buzzing, that back and forth, if you're relaxing but still kind of maintaining the idea that there is control. And then I'm wondering is like, I don't know, can you actually relax and still maintain an idea of control? Maybe to some degree, and it depends how much you're relaxing. And it's like if you're relaxed a little bit more than you're used to, it's still maybe not that. I don't know, there's still, you can always relax a little bit more, and there's a back and forth between doing so and maintaining this idea that you do have control, or there is this rigidity to and need to focus on how you're doing, because there's a thought of like there being a right slot to end up in, or to get to. And as long as you think that's the case, there is always going to be that judgment that's happening, whether you're paying super close attention to it or feel like you're feeling it as much or not. It's still there, as long as you're maintaining a right way to live.
Absolutely. Because just live. That's kind of the point. Live your life. But the stress that you're putting on yourself by thinking there's a right and a wrong way, based on the fact you think there's a right and a wrong way you need to go, because otherwise you have less or more value, all of that shit just ruins your ability to pay attention to what's actually happening. And it's interesting because we have a comment on this side, and it's so typical to get this, and it's why I wanted to address it. So we have to stay and watch our lives instead of living it. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is how many of your ambitions are based on this idea that you need to be more and are less currently. So don't worry about the future. So don't invest, don't save, don't develop, don't do vaccines. Nobody is saying any of that. But if you're developing a vaccine, let's just say, so people can look at you as being the savior, or worse, so that way you can make a lot of money and benefit yourself, then that's not exactly a vaccine that's doing a lot of people a lot of good, is it? So you're doing it for the wrong reasons then, aren't you? And I can't imagine what kind of consequence that might have of doing it for the wrong reasons. And that's what we're saying, is that why we're doing these things is more important than the doing them. Because if we don't know why we're doing them, these things that might have been helpful to us become poisonous to us. That's more or less it. And so I just wanted to address that. Just let go, like Fight Club. That's the point here. No, that's not the point here. Though it's a good movie. That's really not the point here. The point is that let go of the fiction of yourself. And that was the point of Fight Club, regardless of what the ultimate storyline was. The point was, you are not this thing that you need to hold up in front of everybody and pretend to be. You're you. Make your decisions accordingly. But to make decisions your entire life, trying to run from a fiction towards another fiction, living in a world of assumptions and more fictions, surely you see how that leads to confusion and conflict, and what we're currently dealing with right now, which is what I was saying at the beginning of this episode, that it's not that you are suffering through a chemical imbalance. It's that we are all suffering through an imbalance. And because of that, we're experiencing it. And instead of looking at ourselves and going, oh, there's something wrong with me, we have to recognize that the idea of us isn't the reality, that you are connected to everything. You are everything. If you're experiencing that imbalance, there's probably something that we could all be looking at. So it's more complicated than what we're making it. We just want that silver bullet. This has been a lot of fun. We have about 2 minutes left. Everybody, we are having a live call-in show immediately after this. Well, actually, in about 15 minutes. You can join us. Excuse me. I'm going to go and smoke another joint. Obviously, I need one. No, just kidding. You can join us on our YouTube channel or on twitch.tv/Dualistic Unity. There is also a Patreon group immediately after, and you can shoot the shit with us in person on the group. Tell us your thoughts. Tell us your theories. Tell us your insights. Question us. Even just tell us we're full of shit. However you'd like to spend that time, we're happy to spend it with you. But we will see you all very shortly on Twitch.
Yeah, looking forward to it, and looking forward to continuing this conversation, especially about yourself being in the way and the assumption that, just let go and everything. It's like, what's going to happen? I don't know. It's like you actually start living your life when you're not in the way so much anymore. It's not based on the assumption that this thing is going to play out in a way that you want it to and mean something about you. Because when you're focused on yourself, it's like everything means something about you, as opposed to you just being what's going on, like living life without that nagging distraction from what's actually fucking going on. But anyway, looking forward to the call-in show. Appreciate everyone for tuning in, and we'll talk to you soon.